And a very good Monday afternoon. Welcome into Five Clubs here on Golf Channel. It is great to have you with us. I am Gary Williams. This program, whatever time of the day it is always brought to you by Century Insurance, right by you. If you have business insurance needs, they're going to meet them. And they also partner and invest in the game of golf in the best ways with the United States Golf Association and the First Tee just to begin with. Golf Pride, when it comes to gripping it, and those 24 players in Farmingdale, New York, they're going to be gripping it. I don't know how tightly. Well, most of them are going to be using Golf Pride grips because players at every level trust Golf Pride more than any other grip company in the world. And of course, Peter Millar, when it comes to having an apparel line that can outfit you for anything you need in your life, they are the answer. It is Peter Millar, petermillar.com, and they've got retail stores all across America. This is not our normal origination time. This is not a normal week. As most of you know, if you're watching the network of record in the game of golf, because it's Ryder Cup week. And we sit here and we build this up and some go, enough, can we play this thing already? Soon enough. Friday morning, just after 7 o'clock. And over the next couple of hours, I'm going to be joined by a lot of people who have a lot to do with the Ryder Cup, not only covering it, but being in the belly of the beast, starting with Ian Poulter, who's going to join me in less than 15 minutes. The match play ninja himself. He ignited a situation in 2012 at Medina late on a Saturday afternoon in the outskirts of Chicago, Illinois, that a lot of people are still trying to come to grips with. Well, he will be with me. Also, Stewart, because when you think about wagering in the game of golf, yes, most of these events, the lion's share are about 72 holes and just who's going to win at the end? One guy. This is very different in so many ways. So he is going to give you a tutorial on how to, if you're going to, quote, lay one down, if you're going to bet on this event, and he is an expert in that area from Read the Line. He's going to join me. Jim Bones Mackay will also be with me. He now part and a big part of the NBC broadcast team, but he has been as well right in the thick of it, starting in 1995. Hard to believe, 30 years ago was his first Ryder Cup caddying for Phil Mickelson and did 10 occasions, 10 times. He knows what it's like. I shared a moment with him at Medina in 2012. I promise you he won't remember. I promise you I will never forget. I will remind him of it when he joins me. And then Rob Lee is going to join me as well from Sky Sports to give more of a European perspective on this team, why this culture, why this side has been so good at this thing for so long. And then Gabby Herzig is going to be with me as well from The Athletic. She's a contributor here at Five Clubs. And finally, Brendon de Jonge, who knows what international team competitions are like. He participated on the international side in 2013 in the President's Cup, a road experience for him at Muirfield Village. So we've got a loaded deck, so to speak, as we take you until 3 o'clock Eastern time and then live from the Ryder Cup, the bellwether brand of covering the game of golf at all the biggest events. And their wall-to-wall, round-the-clock coverage will start at 3 o'clock. And from now until when the peg is put in the ground, and you won't hear that peg going in the ground because that's one of countless things that is so different about this event. Let me just start right there. I talked about the build and how this conversation starts really not long after whichever one ends, because in Rome when it ended, and it felt like it ended sooner than it actually ended because it was a blowout. And that's part of the narrative that we're dealing with here as this event comes back to the United States, because it has been a series of blowouts. The home team has not only held serve, they've done it in emphatic fashion. And that started in 2014. And the truth is, we were on our way to a blowout in 2012 when something highly unusual happened. But since then, 2014, 16, 18, 21, and 23, the home team has jumped on the road team and said, you know what? Like Herman Boone said, or heard from Coach Yost, run it up, Herman, leave no doubt. These are no doubters. These are blowouts, and that average margin is 17-11. So it hasn't been compelling late. My intuition tells me that it might be different this time, but who knows? But that's part of it, because when this thing starts, unlike what we watch and love on a week-to-week basis at the elite level, is that players have tee times. And they walk to those tee times, and they usually do it in a serene environment. And there may be a modest gathering on that first tee with, the obligable little golf clap that we get. Not here. Not here. And I'm not suggesting it is coming out of the tunnel at Lambeau or same thing at Cameron Indoor or Fog Allen Fieldhouse. But it's golf's closest thing to doing just that. Because just after 7 o'clock on Friday, something is going to commence that does something to these players that they are unaccustomed to dealing with. And so when the best players in the world, like Scotty Scheffler, has expressed himself that he couldn't feel his arms, those are things that he does not experience on a regular basis. And when old lions, rough riders like Hale Irwin turn to somebody like Lanny Watkins, who's never been scared of much, and says, hey man, I know the plan all along was for me to hit the opening tee shot. I don't think I can do that right now. This is very different. What this is the essence of what athletic competition is, whether it's you and your boys down on the blacktop or going on a boondoggle and playing rounds of golf. It gets chippy, doesn't it? Even though you may settle it all at the end of the day with some modest wagers and a couple of cold ones, I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the case this week. Yes, they'll get together on Sunday night and they'll share some fellowship to some degree, and whoever wins, it's going to go on longer for that side. The essence of competition, especially at the highest level, friction. Friction. Because when you get around somebody and it's in a confrontational environment, which golf is not, you go to the tee and you have a scorecard and a pencil in your back pocket. You put your number in it. And on occasion, maybe you will have two players who don't see eye to eye, who don't particularly care for each other. And actually, there's a couple of guys in this that I do not think care for each other that much. And who knows if we may see Rory McIlroy and Bryson DeChambeau in a foursome or four-ball. Or would it be delicious if all of a sudden Sunday singles and it's McIlroy and DeChambeau. Long way from right now until then. But my point is that friction and confrontation is not associated with the game of golf, but it is here. Because just think about some of the images going as far back as you want to, and I'm not saying go all the way back to 1927 at Worcester Country Club. And by the way, it started in a very modest way, like most things do. It is a monster now. It wasn't then. It was just a gathering of people of two continents trying to foster interest in the game of golf in faraway lands. And what it is now is golf's full contact experience. And so when these players get on that first tee, mind and body might not cooperate. And when those things happen, you know what? You've got adrenaline at levels maybe you haven't experienced before, because these matches are 18 one-act plays. Every single hole produces a result. That's not what they're accustomed to. They're accustomed to what is kind of an austere, congenial environment, and they meander into their rounds, and then they post a number. And then they do it the next day, and then hopefully by the weekend, they played their way into contention. Contention starts with it being contentious before they hit a shot. That's why this is something that people way outside of this very, very, very intellectual environment that people like yourselves watching right now are devoted to and committed to watching the elite play this game, because they're witches, they're aliens, they hit shots that we're unfamiliar with. You know what they also do? They produce some shots in this environment that you go, I hadn't seen him do that before. I've never seen Mark Calcavecchia skip a ball almost across an entire lake. That's because he was melting down under what was the white-hot heat of this competition. Do you remember the scene when Commander Galloway goes down to Gitmo to kind of question Colonel Jessup? And he says, I'm a reasonable man, but this blanking heat is making me crazy. This heat doesn't get to where it builds and maybe you experience it late. Sorry, the burner is turned up all the way up from that first tee. And what we also have this time around is Luke Donald, who when he was appointed the captain of Europe was the substitute teacher. You know, the one who came in for the social studies class and you'd be like, oh man, I'm going to be throwing paper airplanes across the room. I'm not going to pay attention to him. He'll be gone the next day. Well, what he's become is the master professor, and he decided one wasn't enough. He's going for the double. And the last person to do that on the European side was Tony Jacklin, also an English-born great player, a major champion who did just what Luke Donald is trying to accomplish. 1985, he won at home, and he brought the band back together. And he did it again for the first time on American soil in 1987 at Muirfield Village. So Luke Donald could have walked away and he would have been firmly implanted as someone in Ryder Cup lore on the European side as a made guy. If he does this, he goes into the pantheon. And I mentioned doing it again. He's not just doing it again. He's doing what Jake and Elwood Blue did. They're getting the band back together, like every member of the band, the bass player and the keyboard player. 11 of the 12 guys from Rome are going to Farmingdale. And here's the thing about it. That's never been done before. The only time a Ryder Cup team brought 10 players from the previous side was 1971 and 1973. And that was Great Britain and Ireland. You know what they took? A beating twice by the United States team. Europe gave the beating in 2023, and they'll take it any way they can get it. Hell, they'll take 14-14 and hold on like grim death to that trophy and head on home. Most of them back to Jupiter, but you get my point. And for Keegan Bradley, Captain Keegan, a contemporary of his team, appointed kind of at the 11th hour, and it was something that you're going, did they really just make him the captain? The guy who was snubbed for Rome, and he almost played his way onto the side, didn't pick himself, and now here he is, not far from where he went and played college golf at St. John's when he used to sneak out to Bethpage and play as many holes as he could because he couldn't cross the road, because if he did, the ranger might identify him and then he'd get in trouble. Yeah, that guy. And what if he does this and they win? He puts himself in a very special place, because these weeks are weeks that we remember. We remember the individuals. We remember David Duval, shirt tail hanging out, and you're going, that's not the David Duval that I'm used to, the Iceman who barely makes any expression at all. Yeah, that guy. Or Seve and Fauda weeping in each other's eyes. Two guys who would have truly done anything to beat the other guy any other week of the year. It's Ryder Cup week. It's delicious. It is nourishing. It is special. It is why Jim Brown, the late great running back for the Cleveland Browns, who didn't play golf, when asked, what's your favorite sporting event? He said the Ryder Cup, because it's about one thing, team. That's where we are as we start with you on this Monday, leading to Live From at 3 p.m. Eastern. When we come back, he got it. He got it from the moment he got his first taste in 2004 at Oakland Hills. Never lost a singles match. And again, what he did at Medina, that'll stand tall forever. Ian Poulter, Pulse, will join me next as we begin with you for the next 2 hours. A lot of guests. Glad to have you with us on this Monday afternoon on 5 Clubs here on Golf Channel. We're back right after this. Back in on this Monday, it is Ryder Cup week here on 5 Clubs on Golf Channel. 3 o'clock live from the Ryder Cup. They begin their full and comprehensive week of coverage from Long Island. And of course, this segment is being brought to you by Golf Pride. When it comes to grips, more players at every level trust Golf Pride more than any other grip company in the world through the bag, including that reverse taper putter grip series. All right, joining me now, you can think about the last quarter century. You can think about the entire history of the Ryder Cup. A few people have done more to give images that will stand up forever than the guy who's joining me now. He was baptized into this competition in 2004 on the road, which seems so appropriate that he said, yeah, I'll do my first. Let's make it on the road. I am, of course, speaking of Ian Poulter. My friend, it's good to see you from your home. How are you?
Gary, I'm really well, thank you very much, yeah.
Well, thanks for joining me. I mentioned the baptism in '04. You know this. You know, you aspired to do this, and the elite player, you're used to certain things. The central nervous system experiences something at this event that is uncommon. Why did your body and mind cooperate to the degree that it did immediately when you got thrust into this?
I'm not sure it kind of got, you know, I kind of acclimatized to it immediately. This thing was, you know, my first match was against Tiger and Chris Riley with Darren Clarke. And, you know, these kind of outer body sensations that you have of watching the Ryder Cups and Seve and Alathabal and all those players. And now all of a sudden, I'm kind of walking down the first hole going, wow, it's for real. So things happen. Things happen with your body. Things happen with your mind. The crowd allowed. And, you know, it truly is one of the most incredible feelings I've ever had in anything I've ever done. The adrenaline rush, the buzz from the fans, the sense of pride and passion and everything that goes into representing the badge on your shirt and, you know, having that honor to go out, represent, you know, your continent and be able to go out there and try and deliver for them. It's a very special, very emotional and exhausting, exciting week.
You know, so you mentioned, you know, who you're paired with, and you think about the players on that 2004 team. A lot can change in a decade, and a lot changes for both sides in a decade. But one thing, Ian, that hasn't changed, Europe does this event exceptionally well. If you had to put your fingers on whether it's nuanced, the cultural, institutional things about the system itself, why do you think Europe has built something that has been so sustainable as faces change?
Interesting question. I have to turn around and think that, you know, I don't know the magic answer, but if you do a deep dive and try and look into it, the makeup of the individuals in Europe as to opposed to some of the makeup of the individuals on the US team, Europeans generally gel together a little bit better. I think the US have done a better job with that over the last 10 years, but it means an awful lot to European players to be able to go out there and compete with one another for the Ryder Cup. And I'm not taking anything away from the Ryder Cup by saying, you know, the Americans kind of do this every year because they have the President's Cup in between. But, you know, does that create the hunger, the passion, the desire, the want to play for, you know, not just obviously your partner, but obviously vice captains, captains, and obviously your continent. I think that has a little bit to do with it. And also there's a bit of a time gap as well, I think, for some of the players in the US that get a few weeks break after the FedEx Cup. And, you know, some of the Europeans don't quite have that break, and they might be a bit fresher.
Rory McIlroy, when people look at his history in the Ryder Cup, which started in 2010, if they start really examining, like, who has he partnered with through the years? You a lot. And famously, on that Saturday afternoon at Medina, it was him, mouth agape, shaking his head like, I cannot believe what I'm witnessing my partner doing. When you look at him now, he's 36 years of age, but as a partner, what did you appreciate about going out there and trying to get a point with him? And in terms of his strengths, his personality, his willingness to commit to you as a partner?
I think playing with somebody like Rory, having somebody that you kind of look up to from a perspective of what he's been able to accomplish within the game of golf, far superior in game than obviously what I had, kind of helped me because I could relax. I could literally know that I've always got someone to fall back on. And I think that helped bring out the best in me. So, that dynamic of having that there and having that reliance to, to know to myself, listen, I'm just going to go out and be my character, be who I am, like go out there and, wear my heart on my sleeve and be the one that tries to take it to the US team. And you know what, if it's not going to work out, listen, I've got this great guy next to me who's also seriously impressive. So, it's gelled well, I think, through time. The matches that I've played with him, and certainly back to that crazy match in Medina was one I'll never forget.
Going back, Langer in 2004, and then all the captains subsequently that you played for, was there anything that seemed, in terms of messaging to the team, that you could say they all applied this? Or did they all just kind of have their own personal touches and they put it in the stew and it worked?
They've all had their individual touches, and I think that's what's been nice. So there's not been a secret sauce, I think, with every single kind of team. Luke being the captain that's now going to go back to back, this very much is an opportunity for Luke to kind of roll out, 11 players that obviously played last time and with one rookie. I think everyone's got their own little stamp that they want to put on their captaincy. Some have done it better than others. But when I look at all the ones I've played, 5 of the 7 have been victorious. So whatever their stamp has been a pretty good stamp. We could write papers on how they all did it slightly different, but the team energy with inside what Team Europe has is something that is very, very tight.
When Bethpage was announced, I was hosting Morning Drive in Orlando, and you would be kind enough to roll over and co-host the show on occasion. And you said it out loud, that's the one I want. And here we are. And this is not about, examining decisions. I know that you're thrilled with where life is for you. Most importantly, seeing kids doing what they're doing. But are you a little melancholy? Because everyone's going, this is Poulter and Mickelson. This will be their captaincy. Have you thought about that at all?
Yes and no. Listen, it's too easy to play the what if game, right? It would have been wonderful to have been there in Bethpage Black going up against Mickelson. But you know what? That path didn't open itself up that way. So I don't dwell on it. I kind of look there in all of the, Ryder Cup kind of amazement that I've been able to be a part of and really feel kind of proud about how I've performed, how I've, dedicated myself to, trying to make sure I performed every time I play. So look, what if is not really in my mentality, and who knows, one day I may be able to help them out again down the road.
With that being said, and I know that, look, at some point this is going to come to a head, and it looks like it will after that, as far as some type of resolution between the PIF and the DP World Tour. Because, look, like yourself, Lee Westwood, Sergio Garcia, Graham McDowell, you guys are all lined up, presumptive captains. We can go all the way into into 2038 for that matter, if we wanted to. Does your intuition tell you that this will get resolved, and by a dare manner, that you guys can be returned to the system in various capacities?
I would like to hope so. Let's put it that way. Although I am not confident that it's going to bring itself together in time for 2027. I just... with what I know and the conversations that are going on, I don't really feel there's kind of that much movement. But you know what? Things can happen quickly. I'm hopeful that one day, I don't know whether it's 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, I'm going to be more grey by then probably. But look, I hope so. I love the Ryder Cup. I love what it's meant to me from a playing perspective, what it's meant for me from a family perspective. And they've been incredible. They've been incredible weeks. They've been the best weeks of my life.
I've got to ask you, because these team competitions, you know what, you responded to them exceptionally well. You loved all of it. You just experienced a team competition as a dad, one of the great events in the game of golf, the Walker Cup. Your son Luke at Cypress Point. Just give me a minute on what that was like as a dad, as a family, to see him perform, represent not only himself, his family, GB&I, all of it.
Incredible. I don't have probably enough words to say how I felt, how proud I was, how proud we were as parents to kind of watch him peg it up for GB&I and represent in the Walker Cup. It was something I could never do. My pro shop days were never going to have me do that. And now all of a sudden, Luke's transition from a player that was injured last year to somebody that got himself in the top 30 of the world rankings, the amateur world rankings, and he did himself proud. He played the way I thought he could, and he wasn't happy with his overall game, but he managed to win, his foursomes matches, and unfortunately lost in singles. But you know what? It's a great learning curve for him to really understand what goes on inside your body and what it would have been kind of like for me playing a Ryder Cup. He's now seen it from afar. He's been in the team room. He experienced all of the great things of what Ryder Cup is. He's now kind of had a little taste of it in a Walker Cup. So it's been phenomenal. It's been a special moment for us as a family. I hope he continues to grow as an individual and a player, and I'm sure he will.
Well, one of the great images of you, his cheeks in your hands, when you were on a victorious Ryder Cup team, of which you were on many. All right, give me the final. What do you think?
Do you know, I have Europe as slight favourites. I feel even on away soil, the 11 players that played last time, US have got 4 rookies. It's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be super tight. It's going to come down late into Sunday's matches. I'm back in Europe. Come on.
Well, of course, you always will. Good to see your face. Always appreciate the conversation with you. Thank you so much.
Gary, thanks for having me on. Take care.
All right, there is Ian Poulter, 6-0-1 in singles. He loved it. He loved every moment of it. He embodied what it's supposed to be and represented it exceptionally well. All right, we're going to take a break. Keith Stewart from Read the Line, the idea of trying to figure out how to wager a Ryder Cup for players who don't do this on a week-to-week basis, and a lot more, including Bones Mackay, is going to join me in about 15 minutes as well. Great to have you with us Monday afternoon. It is 5 Clubs on Golf Channel. Back after this. Back in on this Monday edition, Ryder Cup Monday edition of 5 Clubs, and this segment is brought to you by Peter Millar. It's the first day of fall, and as I head up to the Ryder Cup, if you don't think that I do not have a suitcase full of layers, it's that time of the year, my favorite time of the year for a lot of reasons. And if you need gear for the fall, the entire fall line available at petermillar.com. Joining me now, he was on this morning on the radio side on Sirius XM. We have a special show that's going to be available to you in the next 24 hours when it comes to trying to understand the best way if you're going to wager on the Ryder Cup. He is from Read the Line. He is the face. He is the voice of Read the Line. He is Keith Stewart. My friend, good to see you.
Gary, I'm honestly humbled and privileged to be here. 15 minutes to talk about golf betting, the biggest week of golf of the year. Let's get after it.
Well, we did it this morning for almost an hour. We did it again for an hour. Both of those interludes felt like 10 minutes. We got to get to as much as we can get to for people who, there's an interest, there is an insatiable appetite for people to wager on professional golf. I mean, it's evidence in how much people are doing this, but this is very different in a lot of ways. So for you, give people an idea of like the principal shift that you have to make in terms of what you do on a week-to-week basis, as well as anybody, to now a team competition with partners in a different format.
this is a super important place to start because a regular PGA Tour event goes over 4 days, and a lot of the wagering and the money, the total handle that comes in, gross dollars bet, happens pre-tournament. Before Thursday, before it gets started, at least 2/3 of it to 1/3 that then happens in tournament, or what we call live betting. Well, we're going to flip the script this week, and it's going to be almost all live betting once these pairings come out, because there's so much information that we have yet to understand about who's going to go head-to-head against one another. Now, we'll talk about it for 4 days, but we really don't know anything, and we're not going to go down and get a ticket and then try to make a bet of one side versus another. Hey, you could bet either team at this point. I think that that is a very safe bet, but unlike a regular PGA Tour event, we've got to wait for those opening ceremonies and get the breakdown for Friday morning and then go from there.
Let's stop and start right there, because a lot of people, me included, I was being presumptuous about what I think Luke Donald was going to do. Like, why wouldn't he take the guys that were successful being partnered together in Rome for a couple of days before they got to singles and trot it back out there? And you're saying, wait a second, this is very different. Explain.
Well, I think that I have to thank someone like Luke Donald for employing a person like Eduardo Molinari on his team, because they're looking deeper at analytics, and now as a result, the American side is looking deeper into analytics, which is all basically discussion points for what it is I do, which is when it comes down to wagering on golf, we look a lot at the strokes gained data, the golf course breakdown, the architecture, the agronomy. We put all of that puzzle together, and then we try to make our best educated guess. And without those guys kind of leaning into this over time, and then, America making, sports betting legal, I mean, all of this is kind of a perfect storm. Now you bring it to a halt in the most golf-starved market in the United States, which also has the largest amount of, wagering handle on any given month, let alone any given year. And I think you could call up George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg, because it's a perfect storm.
The idea of the venue and the home, wherever this thing has been contested for the last decade, has produced blowouts. Can you quantify the value of Bethpage to the United States team in terms of points?
Ooh, in terms of points.
Yeah. I mean, are they a 1.5 point favorite because Bethpage gives them that 1.5 point? Is that something that can be?
I think in golf, we talk about the NFL, it's like 3 points, give or take, for home field, right? But you and we've kind of talked about this off camera, that it's always the same field. I think it's way more than a point to be home. I mean, we've seen it over the last 5 of them.
Margin's been 6 for the home team in the last decade.
6.6 on average, right? So it has been a blowout. So I think that not only are you taking the home field and crowd, but you're also manipulating the stadium in a way that suits you and should be a weakness for the other side. And anyone that needs proof of that, then they just can go back and watch Marco Simoni. The
Scheffler dynamic is interesting, because you've made it very clear that if you want to bet Scotty Scheffler, you got to wait for him to get way down. And even when he gets way down, like he was at the Pro Tour, he was 8 back and he was 8-1. Anybody else you think, roughly 100-1 probably?
In that range,
virtually any, and forget the profile of the player. How much, when it comes to him, or whether it's the way that you wager him, are negated or decreased because he now is tethered to a partner in 2 different formats?
I think that's a really interesting question, because the U.S. is favored on all the book markets because someone like Scotty just won the Pro Tour, and we have the #1 player in the world. It's like
the odds changed after that event, right?
They did, and they went further in the U.S. favor, and they made the European team more of an underdog. I think that Scheffler creates a huge bias, and that's one of the reasons why we're favored so much. You and I both agree that these 2 teams are extremely equal on paper. Now, I know it's not played on paper, but they're extremely equal. They also play golf very similarly, but the fact that we're that much of a favorite has everything to do with home field and Scotty Scheffler.
Okay. The wagering overload, people can get distracted because there's a lot of choice. Yeah. And in this particular event, boy, there's a ton of choice. I mean, every hole can produce an outcome. And with that, you're going, okay, I'm going to do it all. give people some do's and don'ts, some things that they should stay away from, and some things that maybe they should focus on for more practical reasons as far as wagering?
I think the best thing I can say to sum it up is that you want to be able to control the controllables. And what I mean by that is that if you are making bets like most points or most points by a rookie, and they are dependent upon what Luke Donald and Keegan Bradley choose to do, then that becomes very subjective, and you're very much chasing. You might as well be betting whether or not there's a hole in one. I would stick to things more along the lines of what we know historically and what we know about the golf course and the teams themselves. Who will win a certain foursomes session? Who will win day one? Well, the U.S. has been very good at home on day one. To win day one on Friday at Bethpage, I think that that's a fantastic bet, right? Those are the types of things that I would target. I would stay very much away from anything where the captains are making a huge decision whether or not someone will play, even if it's analytically based or gut based.
Speaking of day one, Valhalla 2008, 12, 16, 21. The United States has been very good on day one in all of those. And Medina, even day two, you look at Europe facing deficits going all the way back to Valhalla. The 2 points after day one, it's not insurmountable. Whistling Straits, which produced the biggest blowout in the history of the competition, that seems like a lot, and they just poured it on. Last thing for now, and again, our show on our YouTube channel, 5 Clubs Golf, is going to be available tomorrow. It's an hour of you explaining much more on this subject matter. Are you conditioned to say who's going to win this thing, or is it too early in the week?
I mean, it is quite early in the week.
Yes, it is.
It is quite early in the week.
Give me a lean.
A lean for sure. I'm going to go with the USA.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the PGA of America, and I'm going to go with the United States. I feel like for the first time, Keegan Bradley has done something that is not a part of the boys club or is a little bit more accepting some outside opinion, some analytic opinion and everything. When he didn't choose himself, I think he chose the United States. And I think alongside home field and Scotty Scheffler in his prime, I think that we have a slight edge. And I think that, hey, I would put the NFL on DVR come Sunday, because you are going to be tuned into Bethpage. It's going to be absolutely electric.
We can hope so, because it really hasn't been that way for a decade, home or road. Again, our show with Keith Brendon de Jonge going to be available tomorrow. All of his stuff at Read the Line all week. More comprehensive information than you will find anywhere else. Thank you, my friend. Really appreciate it. When we continue, Jim Bones Mackay, he has been in the belly of the beast a lot in this competition, now a big part of the NBC broadcast team. He will join me as we continue on a Monday edition of 5 Clubs. It's Ryder Cup week. We're back right after this. Back in on this Monday edition, Monday afternoon. It is Ryder Cup week, 3 p.m. Eastern, live from the Ryder Cup here on Golf Channel. They begin their very comprehensive week of coverage leading to those opening tee shots on Friday morning. Of course, opening ceremony on Thursday. This segment is brought to you by Century Insurance. If you have business insurance needs, they will meet them. The man joining me now is a big part of the NBC golf broadcast team, but he has been in the middle of this thing, in the deep end of the pool at 10 Ryder Cups 30 years ago at Oak Hill, and all the way through the years, and I know how much he loves it, and that, of course, is Jim Bones Mackay. He joins me now. Bones, good to see you. Thanks for taking the time.
Gary, great to be with you. Happy Ryder Cup week to everybody out there. Can't wait to get going.
I know, look, for people, you're a huge sports honk. You love it all. But you love this most of all. You won't remember this. In 2012, I was walking down the 18th fairway, and you guys, Phil and Keegan, had already taken care of their match, and it was Nicholas Colsaerts and Lee Westwood playing Stricker and Woods. And you turned to me and you said, have you ever been inside the ropes for a Ryder Cup? And the answer was no, I hadn't. I'd been to several, but it was my first time experiencing it like that. And you said, your response to me was, and it wasn't in a professorial way, you said, don't ever take it for granted. And I'm like, I won't. You don't remember that interlude. I'll never forget it.
Yeah, there's something special about that week. And I think that, as I've said all along, there's something about the Ryder Cup. I think it's my favorite event. anywhere in sports, and what these guys go through in terms of making these teams and how much it means to them, and ultimately representing their tours and their families and their continents, if you will. It's just there's nothing else like it, and I just cannot believe that Bethpage Ryder Cup week is finally here, and that come Friday morning we're going to finally get this thing going.
Paper is palpable when you start looking at stats and numbers and resumes. How do you assess the strengths of each one of these teams? Let's start with Europe. What do you think are among their greatest strengths?
Well, I think certainly if you look at Europe, it's just momentum. There's no denying that they have momentum in this event. And even though the U.S. won the last time it was played on U.S. soil there at Whistling Straits, over the last 20, 30 years, the Europeans have come up with some strategies that have been incredibly effective in terms of ultimately getting them to the finish line. So they come in here as defending champions, if you will, given what went on in Rome. Their team is absolutely stacked. And I think it's, relative to your guest that you had on before me, I think this thing's an absolute push as we ultimately get into the competition days itself. And as far as the Americans are concerned, I think certainly you can't say enough about the home course advantage, if you will. Keegan Bradley is going to have been quite involved in terms of the setup of the golf course. But I think that for the Americans to have a great week, a couple of guys in particular need to have positive match results, if you will, and that would be Xander Schauffele and Colin Morikawa, a couple of guys that haven't had the best years of their careers, certainly in 2025, but have stepped up into this event before. And I think that you just can't, you can't obviously put too much weight on Scotty Scheffler's shoulders. He's the best player in the world, but can only do so much. But I just think that those two guys in particular need to have huge weeks. I think Justin Thomas also falls into that category.
Bones, through all the years, consultation between player and caddy, the conversations that you had, that it was, and you know how it is with Tommy Roy, shut up. I mean, it's because we're gathering something there, and you trying to impart whatever the messaging that needed to be perfect to get commitment from the player. Through all the experiences you had with all players and caddies, is this week the week where you hear more of messaging and one final thought for that player to get commitment?
I think so. I think it's that week unlike any other, and certainly it's match play, and things are completely different in terms of your mindset, I think. I was having a conversation with JJ Spawn about it a few weeks ago, and we were just talking about how, the thing about, you can make a 10 on the second hole in this event, and it's you lose one hole. It's not the end of the world. You don't have to be perfect, but I also think it's very, very important in terms of messaging. And you talk about the caddy's relationship with the players. I think it's very important that you keep your player up, because it's a little bit like shooting free throws. The Ryder Cup is for me. You get on a bit of a run and you feel like you can make them all, but a couple of them rim out on you. You miss a couple, you start to feel a little bit cold, or you lose a match. It's easy to get down on yourself and feel like, my gosh, it's going to be that much tougher to get over the finish line in terms of winning matches down the road.
Bones, as far as setup, these players on these two sides seem more similar than they were some years ago. One, do you agree with that? And do you think setup this time around can be somewhat of an advantage for the United States? You know that Kerry Haigh and Keegan Bradley and the Brain Trust wants to make it so. Do you think they can?
I think they can. I mean, certainly I would expect to see a setup very similar to what we saw in Hazeltine in 2016, which would be a golf course with very little rough, and I'm already hearing that that's the case, as compared to previous majors played at Bethpage. I think they're going to try and get the greens quite quick. I'm sure they feel like that plays potentially into the Americans' hands. And some length in places. I mean, I've heard statistically the Americans might be a little bit better from around 180 yards, something like that. Certainly that will be up to the analysts, the team employees, in terms of how they ultimately set up the golf course. But the reality is, back in the day, I think that we felt like the Americans were longer off the tee. I'm not so sure that's the case anymore. The Europeans certainly have a powerhouse squad. are coming in with a tremendous amount of momentum, as I stated, and you can't lose sight of the fact that 11 of these guys played at the previous Ryder Cup in Rome that went very, very well for them. So again, I just think this is an absolute dead heat as we head into it, and I just think it's going to be the most epic Ryder Cup ever played.
Last thing, you floated the idea that why can't Luke Donald and Keegan Bradley kind of wink, wink, nod, nod on Saturday night and go, yeah, Rory, Scotty in the 4-hole. How plausible is that, Bones?
Maybe not as plausible as I'd like it to be. I'm sure that if they came across that comment that I made in an NBC pre-tournament news conference, that they probably laughed it off and said, I don't care about that. I just want our team to get across the finish line and finish and win this event, and we'll put them out any way we see fit. But I floated it based on the fact that Luke and Keegan have a great friendship. There's a lot of mutual respect there. And of course, I think it would to some degree bring the house down in terms of having those two guys out there, fourth off on a Sunday at the Ryder Cup. But whether it happens, or not, it's just, I think this is going to be just an incredible event. And I hope that everybody at home enjoys watching it and taking it in as much as we will be there covering it for NBC.
Yeah, absolutely. One last thing. Was there in all the team rooms you were in through the years, were there a couple guys that you greatly appreciated just the way that they were, their commitment to the whole team environment, some American players?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would have to say probably Jim Furyk and Steve Stricker. And I think it's interesting in that both of those guys went on to become captains, with some success in Stricker's case and not so much for Jim there, I think, in Paris several years ago. But they were just wonderful, wonderful teammates, always, pumping you up, taking responsibility for whatever went on the golf course. And I remember, Furyk beating Sergio Garcia in 1999 in singles, and Sergio certainly was and is a great player at that time, and how tough of a task that would have been for Jim. But these guys, you live and die with it. They're both people that have a tremendous amount of passion and love for the event, and I'm sure they're as excited for this week as any of us.
Yeah, and Jim Furyk, as you know, he'll be a trusted voice for Keegan this week for sure. He's got other guys on that staff with not nearly the experience as Jim does. It's great to see your face. Always appreciate the conversation. Look forward to seeing you this week.
Gary, I'll see you up there. Let's have a great week.
Absolutely. There is Jim. Bones Mackay, those are winning words from Century Insurance. When it comes to having the conversations you need to have to resolve your business insurance needs, Century wants to have those conversations. We got a lot more to do. We got an additional hour, and a reminder at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. It is live from the Ryder Cup from Bethpage as they begin their full week. I'm talking into the evening hours, first thing in the morning, all the press conferences, all of the interviews, and of course the opening ceremony leading into those opening tee shots on Friday morning from Bethpage Black. In the second hour, Brendon de Jonge is going to join me, and he is going to give his perspective on what it's like to be in that team room and to represent, as he did for the international side back in 2013 in the President's Cup at Muirfield Village. And also Rob Lee is going to join us from Sky Sports, the European perspective. And then bottom of the hour at around 2:30 Eastern Time, Gabby Herzig, contributor here at 5 Clubs and also a great writer from The Athletic. She's working on a couple of very interesting pieces this week that we will talk about. One of them is Luke Donald, but also her thoughts on a number of other items, because this is as juicy a week in terms of all the little things that they might hear, the people who are covering this event. And again, anything that is said that could be construed as the smallest slight, as apparently Rory made. That's the other thing about this event. Golf doesn't lend itself to bulletin board material. This week, we've already gotten some, because Rory said something about Bryson DeChambeau only getting attention when he talks about others. That isn't really true. He does have a very robust YouTube audience that he's hitting shots in his home, but that alone will find itself, if they do have a bulletin board, if those even exist anymore, they're probably presented in a PowerPoint presentation these days. All right, we got another hour to go. It's great to have you with us here on 5 Clubs on Golf Channel. Again, a reminder, in an hour's time, you will have live from the Ryder Cup here, live from Bethpage. All right, we continue with you. Brendon de Jonge will join me in studio after this. Welcome back into Five Clubs here on a Monday afternoon. We're used to doing mornings here. It's very nice to get an afternoon tea time, and this is a special week. It's a special time. We wait between these events for 2 years. It is Ryder Cup week. We have another hour with you, and then it is live from the Ryder Cup from Bethpage with their great team. Comprehensive coverage for the next several days leading to those opening tee shots on Friday morning. And this program is always brought to you by Century Insurance. Business insurance needs are met by Century, and they also invest in golf in great ways. Their partnerships with the USGA and also with the First Tee. Golf Pride is the premier and leading grip company anywhere in the world for all players at every level. And Peter Millar, when it comes to having more options for whatever it is that you need, from the boardroom to the playground, and of course, every round of golf that you ever play, they have the most comprehensive line of apparel. Go to petermillar.com. All right, joining me now in studio, a regular contributor here to Five Clubs, but also PGA Tour Live and Golf Channel as well. Brendon de Jonge, who was on that 2013 International President's Cup team at Muirfield Village. Good to see you.
Good to see you as always.
All right, let me ask you just about the experience, because it is a career appointment. I mean, when you make one of these teams, it's reflective of a lot of things, starting with performance. I mean, you want to win golf tournaments, you want to contend in majors, but this is a byproduct of elite performance against the best players in the world. What did that mean to you at that point in your career to be on that team?
Yeah, it was a lot of goals fulfilled, Gary. It was an absolute highlight as far as my golfing career went, and it was nice that you've got the recognition, obviously, of your peers as well. You know, and that means so much in our game. But yeah, as I say, just an absolute highlight in my career.
You know, it was neat for me, and I love seeing all these little videos, and now you have these robust social media teams that are capturing everything. These guys walking into their rooms, it's like Christmas. There's swag hanging from everywhere. And look, they get everything already, but they're all going to wear the same clothes. It's like us going on a boondoggle and going, yeah, we got team uniforms. We're going to look really dorky, but we're doing it. It's fun.
It is fun. It's absolutely unbelievable. You get when you check in, you get given 2 hotel room keys. You got one where you're going to sleep and one where you've got all your gear. And I mean, it's just everywhere you look. Every time you come back from a dinner, there's something else sitting on your bed, and it's like Christmas over and over.
Let's start by assessing some of the things that these two teams bring to the table. Let's start with question marks, and let's start with the United States. What are some questions that need to be answered from Keegan Bradley's team?
Well, I think anytime you've got a bunch of rookies, it's a question mark, because you don't know how they're going to handle this. You know, it's a pressure unlike anything else. This cauldron that is the pressure of the Ryder Cup, and you don't know these guys. How are they going to step up to this? The American team's got 4 rookies on there. Like, how are these guys going to handle that pressure? And then, you know, there's a couple guys that aren't in the greatest of form either. You know, Xander Schauffele, he's going to be coming in having not played for, 5 weeks since the BMW?
Yep.
That's a long time to not play. Colin Morikawa is a little bit iffy with the flat stick at the moment. And then you look on the other side, and the European team really aren't dealing with any of that.
No, they're not. I think with respect to them, look, Ludwig Åberg, he's still among the best players in the world. There was something that seemed like, oh my gosh, next level. Yeah. And that was before he'd even played in a major championship the following spring, and he finished second at that Masters. One thing to note about American rookies in the last 25 years, 73, 59, and 31. Mm-hmm. That's everywhere. That's road and at home. So they've gotten good performance, good production from the rookies over the last 25 years. The Bryson angle and dynamic is fascinating.
It is.
He by himself is fascinating. Now you got to find somebody that meshes, and maybe meshes playing not only 4-ball, but who knows? You don't think we'll see him in foursomes, or you kind of you don't see him Friday morning?
I'm iffy on this one. I really am. And I'm iffy who you pair him with. Like, do you go the way with somebody that can match the energy that Bryson brings? You look at that American team, Justin Thomas can maybe match that energy. Ben Griffin's a high energy guy. Maybe he can match it. Or do you go the complete opposite side and you go with somebody that's about as stoic as it gets?
What would you do?
I would try and match the energy.
Okay.
And I know that we've had discussions about this before. Cam Young is the opposite side of that. Cam Young is about as stoic generic as it gets. When I think of Cam Young playing with Bryson, I remember how Cam Young was when Paul Tesori caddied for him. Cam Young didn't want to talk all the time. He didn't want to have to deal with all of that. I could see that kind of going the same way playing with Bryson.
That's a fair point. I do think that the duality of that, and then you can take the equipment part of it, the golf ball, and the fact that there could be some comfort in that. But I get what you're saying. Like he likes to be in that state that he's in. That also is what's interesting about seeing guys act in a way that we're unaccustomed to seeing them act. We've seen the most flatline, placid guys become completely unglued. Sam Burns was barking at somebody in Rome. Like, I can't bleep and hear you. Excuse me? You're Sam Burns. You don't do that.
There's no doubt about it. These team events, they bring out all the feelings. They bring out all the energy, all the different emotions. I was a fairly stoic guy on the golf course, and I got more excited in that President's Cup than I'd ever got, and it wasn't even close.
Scheffler. Is Scotty Scheffler the touchstone of this team? He's not Justin Thomas. Not going to be that way. He's not going to be out in front. But he can be that way, I think, in other ways. Do you think he's the centerpiece, not as just the best player, but as kind of the tone setter in a way?
I do, and I think you touched on it there, that he's going to lead in a different way, and he's going to lead by letting his golf clubs do the talking. Like, if Scotty Scheffler goes out there and drums somebody really early, that's going to resonate and fall back with the rest of the team. But yeah, I think Scotty is the guy that he's going to be kind of the driving force.
You know, I look, none of these guys, you know, you try to achieve in the lane that you're in, which is by yourself, and some are more inclined to respond to this environment more than others. Scotty Scheffler is a team player in life. In terms of, I think, the reciprocity that he shows to people, whether it's just a momentary interlude with a stranger or the way that he is with the people that matter most to him. By the way, those people go back to, you know, his youth. I do think he's inclined to be somebody who will be a good leader without having to say an awful lot. And look, he was a team sport guy, loves playing basketball, and he ain't afraid of confrontation. I do think that him beating John Rahm in singles didn't launch him to the stratosphere that he currently resides in, but I don't think it was nothing either.
Didn't hurt.
No, it did not. Now, on the other side is Rory, and Rory finds himself in a place where what he said in Rome about, you know, winning a Road Ryder Cup is one of the greatest achievements, and we're going to win. Not, I think we're going to win. We're going to win. He is the heart and soul, or is he the biggest star? What is he?
I think he's the biggest star. I don't believe that he's the heart and soul. I think Europe as a group, I don't think they have one big star, and I believe that this has been the case forever. You know, I think that everybody buys.
Seve needed to be Seve for it to become what it became.
100%.
Like, I will make you believe that we're as good as them. And nobody else is going to be able to replicate that. I tend to agree with you that the thing about him that I think is interesting is that usually stars have a hard time blending because of the status they've been given and the amount of attention they get. I think that his team has great affection for him and great warmth for him, despite the fact that he is the biggest star on their team by a margin.
Oh, 100%. There's no doubt about it that these guys have a familiarity with Rory where they're not holding him at a higher regard than anybody else. And I think that is the key to why this culture is so conducive to these guys playing well year after year in the Ryder Cup.
What is the underbelly for the European side? Where is the vulnerability?
You know, when you look at it, they're all in pretty good form. Maybe Sepp Straka's the one guy that it makes you think a little bit. Didn't play the BMW, really struggled at the Short Championship, didn't play well there. And then Rasmus Højgaard, again, going back to that rookie thing, you know, he's the one guy that does come in as a rookie. Those to me are kind of the only two, maybe soft spots in that European team.
The other thing, and he's mercurial by his very nature because he's so forthcoming with kind of state of mind, state of game, as Victor Hovland. In Rome, he announced himself like, I'm the dude. including chipping in on his first hole and choosing to hit the club that everyone goes, that's your greatest deficiency, and said, watch this. And he held his third shot, and he set the tone for not only himself, but I think everybody else. How about him?
I think the self-talk for Victor right now is great. I think if you'd asked back in March when he actually won a tournament, it would have been a different story. But now you listen to Victor talk, and it sounds like he's a lot more comfortable in what he's doing. And I think he's one of those guys that obviously has to be comfortable in what he's doing with his golf swing, and I think he's there right now.
We're going to take a break here in a second. Jon Rahm, I think that we are far enough removed from kind of the contentious, discomforting Live PGA Tour, DP World Tour thing that he and Tyrrell Hatton, I don't see anything there at all.
I think when those guys are all dressed in the same uniform, they're going to look at them exactly the same as they would anybody else in that same light.
A lot of that might have to do with the fact that they're indispensable. Like they are. And Tyrrell Hatton's a more accomplished player, I think more complete player now than he was a couple of years ago.
And I think you can say that about a lot of these guys on this European team that was essentially the same team as 2 years ago.
Robert McIntyre, you're a big believer, is at a different level.
You look at what Tommy Fleetwood did.
Fleetwood, another one.
Yep.
On the American side, who would you say that about? Who's been on the team prior, who you'd think is a better player now than they were formally?
Well, that's a great question of guys that have been on the team.
Yes.
You'd have to think about it a little bit.
We focus on the rookies because clearly they've gone to a next level because they're on the team now.
Mm-hmm. You're certainly not going to say it about Xander Schauffele right now. I mean, Scotty Scheffler is. Scotty Scheffler is a better player.
Yes, he is.
Outside of that, I don't know if you could say that about any of those guys. Harris English has played in one of these. Harris is a more complete player.
To his great credit, he was on the team in 21, dealt with an injury that required surgery, and I think that kind of stealthily he has gotten to a level that, you know, doesn't get a ton of attention, but to return to this place 4 years removed is impressive. You're right. Russell Henley clearly is in a different place to be on this team for the first time. But in the collective of the players who have the experience, I don't think you could say that exponentially like you can about some of the European players.
No, definitely not. There's question marks. Justin Thomas is a guy, the most experienced of the players on that U.S. team, and there's question marks about Justin Thomas right now.
Yeah, there are. All right, we're going to take a break. Rob Lee is going to join us when we continue from Sky Sports. His viewpoint on why Europe has created this culture that the faces change, the captains always change, except for this time around. Of course, this roster is virtually the same that we saw in Rome. And also, what does Europe need to do something that they have done every single decade going back to 1987? Win on the road. He joins us next here on 5 Clubs. And a reminder, 3 o'clock Eastern Time, live from the Ryder Cup here on Golf Channel. We're back right after this. Welcome back into 5 Clubs. It is Ryder Cup week, and again, top of the hour, live from the Ryder Cup at Bethpage here on Golf Channel. This segment brought to you by Century Insurance. Business insurance needs are met by Century Insurance. All right, joining Brendon and myself now, Rob Lee of Sky Sports. If you're wondering what side he's partisan to, just show him on camera. And the answer, I don't have to say anything more. Rob, how are you, my friend?
I'm really good. Is it Friday already? That's what I'm wondering. Is it Friday?
We got a gas bag until then. We got to fill it up until then. By the way, I will say this for people who don't know, like when golf pros, professional golfers see each other, I know you two have history, and I love it because you talk in a language that's different. The camaraderie of people who got to the level you guys got to is one that I don't identify with. But do you have a moment with Brendon that you can share with us? A delightful moment on the golf course?
I could say that I spent 4 delightful days at the Open with Brendon de Jonge. That's what I could say. I never played with Brendon, but you're right about jocks, pro golfers. They all know, they just all know intrinsically how hard the game is. And there's a mutual respect that is straight away laid bare. We all get it. I get it. You get it. Doesn't matter what level you got to. There is a respect and a camaraderie that's instant when you meet or work with fellow professionals. That's always there. And I'm partial to a bit of a South African accent anyway, so Zimbabwean even, Brendon, he's in there.
There we go. All right, let's start with the captain of the European side. You know, he takes the call after Henrik Stenson is removed, and he touches every point in a masterful way, and his team produces a virtuoso performance in Rome, and he says, you know what, I'll do it again, which is cool. And now he's bringing 11 of the 12 with him from Rome. The only difference is the first name. They could substitute for each other, the Højgaard brothers. What do you think is Luke's greatest strengths, Rob? What are they?
Luke's greatest strengths are, he's a bit like Jalen Hurts. If you watch Jalen Hurts for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, wow, yeah.
My team, right? He's a flatliner. He doesn't show you that he gets too excited or too down. And Luke Donald is exactly the same. He's phlegmatic, he's stoic, he doesn't show you that he's riled or impassioned particularly, but there is a steely quality to him that he's always had. Apparently, you know, that translated very well at the last Ryder Cup because he got ultimate respect from his 12. And bar a twist of DNA, he has got the same 12 men, bar the twist of Højgaard, going to the cauldron of New York, which is going to be amazing. They could not be led by a more perfect captain.
Well, Rob, you guys talked about it a lot there. Obviously, it's the 11 of the same with a Højgaard. But, you know, in saying that, do you think we're going to see a bunch of the same pairings, or do you think that changes this year?
That's an interesting one. I've looked at that. Do you know, I think it's going to be a case of plainly the team performed well last time. Plainly the pairings got on with each other. I don't think he's going to veer very far from that. If he does, if he switched it all around and it goes kaput in New York, which it could anyway, keeping the same pairings, I think that will attract criticism. If he goes with tried and tested pairs with guys that get along in their foursomes format and the four-ball format, I almost think it's a no-brainer for him. I don't think we'll see a lot of variation.
You know, Rob, Brendon and I were just talking about a number of these guys on this European side that are obviously still good enough because they're on the team again, but they've gone to another level. And we could rip off the names, but if you wanted to identify a soft spot or a vulnerability of this team, is there one?
In my view, I think the European team, through the spine, looks stronger than the American team. I think the soft spot for the Europeans is where it's being held. Bethpage, New York. I think that could be the soft spot. Now, the Europeans get up, they win that first session comprehensively. Like we talked about before, that New York crowd could turn on their own team. And that could be a real boost for Europe. If the Americans get off to a rousing start on Friday morning, I think it will be very difficult for Europe to peg that back. That's the only underbelly that I see. You know, statistically, it's really hard to win an away leg. Double down with New York, that's doubly hard. But, you know, I think they go there with a lot of confidence. They got a lot of form players coming into this match. And I just can't wait for Friday. I'm not joking. I can't wait.
It's getting closer, Rob. Let me ask you about Jon Rahm. You know, obviously he made the decision to go to Live Golf several years ago. Is he viewed any differently amongst the players on that European team now because of that decision?
No, I don't think there's anybody in that European team looking at Tyrrell or John in any way that detracts from the way they would have looked at them had they stayed with the mainframe. I don't think any one of the 10 look at those two and think, yeah, but, I don't think there are any yeah buts. So Jon Rahm he's got that built-in Spanish passion for the Ryder Cup, handed down from Seve to Ollie, and now to Jon Rahm to be the flag bearer, through Sergio Garcia as well. So I don't think those two are viewed anything other than being phenomenal teammates and phenomenal players. So I don't think it's a thing. I don't think it's an issue.
Rob, from your viewpoint, the ethos of the European Ryder Cup system, it's produced not only great results, but images and moments where you can see these men, you know, the sacrifice, the commitment to the team. What are the reasons that they have built this institution that faces change, but yet whether it be result or just this sense of privilege, never changes?
The DP World Tour, the Ryder Cup, is such a big part of making that whole thing work. It's so massive. And the players are just so proud to represent the continent of Europe and the DP World Tour. It's all kind of melted into one big ball of love, really. And I think this might be unfair. I've always had the feeling that the Ryder Cup means more to the European players than it does to the American players. That could be way off, it could be wrong, but that's the feeling I've always had, that when you see European wins or, David beating Goliath, which in the world rankings it always is, it always seems to mean more to the European players, because not only are they fighting for their continent, they're fighting for their tour. It's like the two things are melted into one. Add to that the fact that the American players are getting paid depending on what they want to do with $500,000, but they're getting money up front. That's another little stick it in the back pocket for the Europeans. We don't want any money. We'll do this for nothing for as long as you want. We will keep coming back. And I think all those little things, in the end, when it comes to a Sunday, adds up to a lot, actually.
I tend to agree with everything you said right there. Changing lanes a little bit here, Rob. What do you really like about this American team that they've assembled here?
Not a lot, actually. No, they got the best player in the world, Scotty Scheffler. He is one sensational golfer, and we tend to be. I say we. It's not me really, but of course I'm pulling for Europe, being half Italian, half Irish. Why wouldn't I? We tend to be a sum of the parts, and the Americans tend to be a collection of parts, great individuals, but looking from the outside, it looks like they struggle to find team, where the Europeans get it, and they have that factory of vice captains, and it's been well established now. You're in the team scenario, you're a vice captain, eventually you get your chance as a captain, and then sometimes you come back to being a vice captain. There's a lot of experience in there, and they know by now the right things to do and the wrong things to do. Through generations of Ryder Cup captains, it keeps stacking and it keeps building. That's what they do. And I think the Americans have tried to copy that way to succeed. They've always had the stronger teams, as I say, on paper, world rankings wise, and they've tried to get that backroom scenario where you are sort of percolating the next captain. You're bringing him through the vice captains of maybe one or two Ryder Cups, and then he'll get a go at being a captain. I like Keegan Bradley. I actually would have loved if he'd have played. I think it would have been phenomenal. But, he decided that wasn't a flag he wanted to wave, so he's going to do it his own way, as he is very much his own man. I like him very much.
Rob, we really appreciate you taking the time. Enjoy the Ryder Cup. I promise Friday we'll eventually get here. Thanks so much.
I'll be there Saturday.
There we go. Rob Lee, Sky Sports, greatly appreciate that. My friend, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
By the way, Brendon won a member guest last week, and apparently there are a lot of people very unhappy that you brought a fraudulent handicap. Now you're going to play in another one this week, is that right?
Yeah, I'm going to see who I can make mad this week. Probably my partner.
Thank you as always. Looking forward to you being in next week for a full recap. You and Johnson Wagner will be joining me. Thanks so much. There is Brendon de Jonge. When we continue, Gabby Herzig, contributor here at 5 Clubs, also a great writer for The Athletic. Her view on the storylines this week, which are aplenty, and a couple of stories she's working on for The Athletic. She is upcoming, and again, top of the hour, live from the Ryder Cup here on Golf Channel. We're back on 5 Clubs right after this. It is indeed time for Gabby's Read, the great writer from The Athletic, and we're very fortunate to have her as a contributor here at 5 Clubs. In this segment, here on this Monday of Ryder Cup Week, is brought to you by Peter Millar. I am headed to New York tonight. I can promise you it's all Peter Millar, and hopefully we get a little touch of fall later this week on Long Island. If you have any needs when it comes to getting clothing as we transition to the fall season, go to petermillar.com. As I mentioned, it's her read on this Ryder Cup. She's got a couple pieces this week. I'm very interested to talk to her about those things and more. She joins me now from the Media Center at the Ryder Cup. Gabby Herzig, how are you?
I'm great, Gary. I'm just incredibly pumped for this week and excited to get started. We're here at the Media Center at Bethpage Black, and I'm eager to go out there, check out the first TC, and it's going to be an amazing week.
It is. It's look, you know, when you cover the sport like you do, there's a lot of the same, and that's great. Every site, every venue has its own touches. Everything about this is a departure in so many interesting and fun ways. Let me start with you and Rory, because he's had a very eventful, historic, very personal year, including just recently winning the Irish Open. And he's got a status that the members of his team do not have. He's the biggest star, and there's no argument that he is, but there is a real belief, and I think everyone shares it, that they have great warmth and affection for him, that he's not a distant star, that he's one of the mates. How has he achieved that?
Absolutely, Gary. I think you're right. I honestly think it comes down to the fact that Rory McIlroy has exhibited this passion and emotion towards the Ryder Cup for the past, 5-10 years. You go back to 2009, I think he said, before he really knew what he was talking about, that the Ryder Cup was just an exhibition. And then you've seen how he's grown over the years. I look back to 2021 at Whistling Straits when he gave that tearful interview after the Europeans got absolutely stomped by the Americans. And then you see what he's done now. I mean, he's an elder statesman in that team room for Team Europe, especially with guys like Ian Poulter, Lee Westwood, Graham McDowell not being part of the Ryder Cup atmosphere and ecosystem for the Europeans now. So Rory has really taken on that role, and combined with the emotion that he displays during and after and leading up to the event, as we've seen these last couple of weeks, really getting a little chippy there with the quotes about Bryson DeChambeau. Yeah. I think all of those factors kind of lead to the team room really embracing him as just that guy to look to.
You know, Gabby, on the flip side, Scotty Scheffler is unquestionably the best player in the world. The United States had the unquestioned best player in the world starting in 1997 with Tiger, but there was a perceived ambivalence that people thought Tiger had about this competition. How do you view Scotty's role in the way that he views this competition?
Yeah, it's super interesting to think about. I mean, Scotty doesn't like the Tiger comparisons, and I think it really makes sense because he's a completely different person and player in the way he approaches the game and competitions like this. I think, we saw it at the Open Championship when Scotty Scheffler went on that 5-minute long ramble about, taking his ego out of the game and not attaching self-worth to his performances. And I think when you bring that to a team environment, that can really start to rub off on the other guys in the locker room. I mean, just looking at Scotty Scheffler's talent, but the way that he detaches himself from his results, it would be really cool if that kind of electrified throughout the rest of the U.S. team room. And I think that's what we're seeing now in terms of just what the other guys in that team room have been saying. In the President's Cup, the last Ryder Cup, even when Scotty Scheffler was a rookie at Whistling Straits, you could see it kind of developing that.
Bryson is not around these American players much anymore because he plays on LIV. Things are very different from what they were a couple of years ago. He's now has this people's champion persona. He has a massive youthful audience on his YouTube channel. How do you view the way that he is either perceived, accepted, and gels among the peer group that he finds himself with now?
I think it kind of remains to be seen how he's going to gel with this year's team, especially because he wasn't there in Rome. So there's a large gap there to see how he can mesh with these guys on a more interpersonal level. But I consider Bryson just a weapon for the U.S. team in terms of what he'll do out there on the course, not even necessarily in the team room, which I'm sure he has an awesome vibe in there with his kind of showmanship and how loud he is and excited he can get. But really, he's going to bring the energy on the course, especially with the crowd being, I think, the biggest advantage that the U.S. team has over Europe here at Bethpage Black, Long Island, New York sports fans. And Bryson can really tap into that energy, especially with the crowd and audience he's built on YouTube. And he will absolutely be something that the team wants to take advantage of this week.
You know this, Gabby, that there are three I could point to. And then look, Justin Thomas won a golf tournament this year. He had a great spring, kind of had a weird major championship season. But if you look at him, Xander Schauffele's had a weird year because of the injury that really stalled him out early. And then Collin Morikawa has had a very unusual year. His last top 10 was back in the month of March. Those three guys have experience in the competition, but I think that there is kind of a collective question mark. With that being said, do you think the four rookies could find themselves in a more significant role for that reason and maybe others?
Absolutely. I think it really, though, comes down to, Gary, the statistics and what the U.S. team room and the stats guys that they work with behind the scenes are saying about who matches up correctly with whom. I mean, you look at a guy like Scotty Scheffler, I'm immediately pairing a Russell Henley with him. We saw that pairing at the President's Cup in Montreal, and just whoever can put Scotty Scheffler in position to do what he needs to do. It doesn't matter if they're a rookie or if they're a more experienced player, slightly out of form. You just want to go with the numbers. And I think the U.S. team has really showed how much they've been relying on that in the past couple of years and learning from the Euros, actually, in that respect. So that's really what I'm looking for. And it's whether you trust, form versus the stats versus experience. I think what the U.S. team has said over the past few years has really gone that statistics route.
I know that as the week progresses, you have to be nimble, and there are going to be things that are going to happen that you're going to write on. But there are a couple of things that you've been working on, and let me start with Luke Donald. I think he's a wonderful study on a lot of levels. I think he's underrated as a historical competitor, getting to world number one in an era where bomb and gouge had become the most practical way to get to the top of the game. And now, as kind of the sub-captain, spelling Henrik Stenson and doing what he did in Rome, and here he comes back for the sequel. What did you learn in the process of putting this piece together about him?
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool to talk to, some of the people around Team Europe who work very closely with Luke Donald just about what these past 2 years have felt like, especially being a repeat captain. Because I thought, the concept of coming back and doing this for a second time in a row is super interesting. And there's been this narrative of continuity around the European team with Luke coming back, with 11 of the 12 guys being back. But really what I learned from reporting this piece is that there isn't much continuity other than the fact that Luke is kind of that pillar for the guys and the points in the standings worked out to create that team. Other than that, the European Ryder Cup team is going with a blank slate this year for the away Ryder Cup and the way that they approach, the notorious New York crowds and that just kind of uncontrollable factor of what you're going to deal with in terms of the environment. So, you heard Rory McIlroy talk about the VR headsets that the European team is using to practice with. They've got some other tricks up their sleeve in terms of what they've used to prepare for a week like this, and it's nothing like what they've done in the past. So I think it's been cool to learn about how Luke is this, figure that's repeatable and he has that same aura going into this event, but he's also switching things up in a big way. So I think people are kind of missing that part of the story a little bit when it comes to Luke, because you see the same face up there making similar speeches, but really behind the scenes things are changing in a big way.
He also said something interesting about if the American team doesn't get off to a great start, you have to understand the market that they're in and that the New York fans will turn on their own. I can tell you, as a Giant fan, I wanted Jackson Dart in the game last night. So did everybody at MetLife Stadium. So I get the point, which shows you how plugged in he is to the environment specifically that he finds himself in. All right, let me ask you about this other piece, because this one is most interesting to me. I want you to explain kind of the concept of the golden hour of the Ryder Cup and what this overall piece is that you're working on.
Yeah, I mean, brainstorming for the Ryder Cup, you look at past cups, and I think in Rome, there was this moment on Sunday that everyone kind of sat on the edge of their seats for, which is, an hour period of time kind of emerges where all of a sudden it feels like the U.S. team had a path to victory there. And at the beginning of the day, it seemed like that wasn't even in the realm of possibility. And so I kind of wanted to explore that concept. We coined it as the Ryder Cup golden hour, and kind of asking other, people, past captains, past players, past caddies, if that phenomenon is really a real thing, and if so, why does it occur? And I just kind of got into the weeds of, Ryder Cup momentum. Where does that manifest? When does it start? How does it feel when it actually occurs in the moment? And different groups are firing on different parts of the golf course, and you literally feel the energy pulsing through the pairings. And talking to someone like Davis Love III, for example, captain from the U.S. team at the Miracle of Benign, obviously didn't go his way there, but just hearing him talk about that moment where he looked at the leaderboard, saw that blue wave, and went, oh shoot, we could actually lose this thing. And just hearing, what goes on in the brain when those kinds of things start to happen at the Ryder Cup, it really shows you the beauty of the event. That singles, if you look at the record books, it doesn't feel like Sunday singles is often that close because of how the scores, eventually shape out. But then if you look at actually what happened in some of those past cups, you can see that moment when things start to converge. And so this article was just an exploration of that and why it tends to happen.
Yeah, that Medina golden hour, as that thing was building, I know when he knew that it was going in the wrong direction, like completely. When Justin Rose made the putt on 17, it's like, oh my God, this is happening. And that was an indelible moment. Before we let you go, and before I ask you kind of your lean, it's too early in the week for me to put you in a position to predict who's going to win. This is the first time we've had you on since you qualified for the Mid-Am. Look, for people who don't know, you were obviously a college golfer, still a highly competitive golfer. The experience, these guys are going to experience something this week that for them is unusual, mind and body. How about for you in the qualifier for the Mid-Am?
Thank you, Gary. First off, it still hasn't really hit me, if I'm being completely honest. I'm getting on a plane 2 days after the Ryder Cup finishes to fly out to Monterey Peninsula to play in the U.S. Women's Mid-Am. I never thought that I was going to qualify for a USGA championship in my golf career. But I went out there with limited tournament experience in the past few years, Gary. I'll be completely honest. I just haven't had time to get out there and play a round that really counts. And you feel the bodily sensations of those nerves when you step on the tee. It literally felt like my arms were spaghetti, and you can see it on my scorecard. I actually started my round with 3 bogeys in a row. So it was something that, you look at Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler, the best players in the world, what they do out there in front of hundreds of thousands of people on TV, in person, and then looking at what I had to do on, there were 2 people standing there at the U.S. Women's Mid-Am qualifier in New Jersey, and I still couldn't feel my hands. So it just gives you a greater appreciation of what these guys and the women do out here week after week.
It's such a neat thing. Can't wait for the full recap on the back end of that. All right, do you have a lean right now? Has your intuition been telling you anything since these teams were finalized?
I just go back to the numbers and, logic and reason. I think it's just so hard to win an away Ryder Cup these days, especially with what the event has become and the home field advantage and the way that they can set up the course in their favor. The home crowd here, especially in New York at Bethpage Black. I actually attended the PGA Championship here as a fan with my family, and I just remember how crazy it was then. So I truly cannot imagine how rowdy and raucous it's going to get out there this week, and I just do think it's going to obviously favor the Americans, and I think they're going to pull it out like they're supposed to.
Looking forward to all the work you will be doing for The Athletic this week. The piece on Luke Donald, looking forward to reading about the golden hour, this threading of the needle, that moment in time where both sides think we're going to do this, whatever the margin might be at that very moment. I look forward to seeing you. Thank you as always.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it as always.
All right, there is Gabby Herzig of The Athletic and, of course, contributor here on 5 Clubs. We come back, some final thoughts from me, and again, top of the hour coming up in just about 10 minutes, live from the Ryder Cup here on Golf Channel. We're back with you right after this. Welcome back in. Last couple of minutes here on this Monday edition, our lone show this week. live from the Ryder Cup coming up top of the hour, and then they will have comprehensive coverage every single day, all day long. Opening ceremony on Thursday, and of course, opening tee shots Friday on all of the networks, and Peacock, NBC, USA Network, and of course, live from on Golf Channel with all of the analysis leading into day one of the Ryder Cup. And as you can see, that first match, 7:10 a.m. foursomes on Friday morning, 4-ball in the afternoon, same on Saturday, and then the 12 Sunday singles beginning at 12:02 Eastern Time on Sunday, December 28th. And of course, for Europe, 14, they get the tie, they retain the cup. And that's one of the things about this event. And it's interesting because this is the PGA of America event, but it was the new CEO of the PGA Tour when he spoke to the media at the Tour Championship. He used a couple of words that are very appropriate words if you want to apply them to this competition. Scarcity. You know, we talk about that absence makes the heart grow fonder. Yeah, we have to wait 2 years for this competition. So the scarcity is there. Simplicity. Hey, if we get to the last hole or whatever hole it is and we're up, we win. It's not complicated. It's really not. And then in the end, for these two teams, the meritocracy of it all. It's an 18-hole match. This is not over the course of 4 days and it's just me against the field. No, it's 4 matches in each session. Friday morning, Friday afternoon, same on Saturday, and those 12 singles matches. This is not complicated either to understand how we get the result. But from the beginning to the end, what we get is something that we're not accustomed to, which is players kind of behaving and comporting themselves in a somewhat different way, if not a demonstratively different way, because they're in an environment which is uncommon. It's an environment that is really reserved for other sports. Sports played in stadiums or arenas that are full and are full-throated from the beginning in the opening tip or the opening kickoff to the final gun. That's what this event provides you. We don't slowly meander into this event and then kind of build to a crescendo and maybe have some stands on the last 4 holes. Oh no. That opening tee looks like it could be an arena in the Atlantic 10. It might as well be the Palestra for all things, because starting well before the sun comes up, the stands are going to be full. That ain't golf. Let's get to our picks. The team here, who do we like? I'm going to go with the United States, as will Gil Hance, Emma Carpenter, Taylor Zarzour, and Jay Billis. Johnson Wagner and Brendon de Jonge think the European side will win again and win on American soil for the 5th straight decade. 87, 95, 2004, 2012. They can do it again in 2025, and if they do, they will just affirm what I already believe. They're one of the great teams in all of sports, and they only play once every 2 years. What we all agree on is that this is going to be intensely and very, very close. It will be intense. That's undeniable. But if we get something close, we haven't had that in a decade. So between now and Friday morning, consume as much analysis or all of it. Either way, those first tee shots will be struck at 7:10 Friday. Enjoy all of it. Live from the Ryder Cup starts next.